You don't really understand loneliness until you've spent a night alone on the road in the middle of a snowstorm, hundreds of miles from the nearest warm light. Most people think truck driving is about freedom, about the open road and seeing the country. That's true for the first year or two. After that, the road stops being a friend. It becomes something else, something that watches you back. My name's Hank Barrow. I've been a long-haul driver for over 2 decades. I've seen just about everything there is to see out here: drunk drivers, ghost towns, wildfires, tornadoes. But nothing comes close to what I saw on Route 117 that December night in 2004. That load was pork shoulders out of Duluth, bound for Boise. Reefer trailer, 50,000 pounds, easy haul on paper. The dispatcher warned me about the weather, but I was already behind a day from a busted tire near Bismarck. I thought I could make up time if I cut through the reservation land north of Helena instead of going south toward the interstate. That's what put me on 117. It was around 9 p.m. when the first flakes started falling. By 10:30, I couldn't see 10 feet in front of my grill. The snow was coming down like white static, swallowing the world in silence. I slowed to 35 and kept both hands on the wheel. The CB was quiet. Not the usual quiet either. No chatter, no background hum. Just dead air. That's rare. Even in the worst weather, someone's always talking. I was starting to feel that crawling tension that comes when the world shrinks to nothing but the hiss of your tires and the groan of your engine. My headlights were 2 ghostly cones stabbing into a white wall. Everything outside the glass felt too close. At 11:12, the radio came alive, not with a station, with whispers. They were faint, buried under static, like someone mumbling just out of range. I leaned closer. It wasn't English, but it wasn't gibberish either. The cadence of the words had rhythm, like chanting. I turned the dial, same thing on every frequency. I shut it off, and for a while, the cab was so silent, I could hear the snow thudding against the windshield. That's when I passed the sign, entering Black Elk Reservation, respect the land and its people. I'd heard of Black Elk before, though I couldn't have told you exactly where. I remembered a driver at a truck stop once saying that stretch of land was haunted, that sometimes you'd see lights out in the trees or people walking in the snow where no one lived. I didn't believe in that kind of thing, but I'll admit the air changed as soon as I crossed that border. The woods pressed close, and the storm seemed heavier. The snowflakes looked almost gray in my high beams, and the road itself felt like it was narrowing, even though the GPS showed it as a straight shot. Then I saw the man. He was standing dead center in the lane, not walking, not waving for help, just standing there. I slammed the air horn. The blast echoed through the woods, but he didn't even flinch. I braked hard, fighting the wheel as the rig skidded. The trailer fishtailed before catching, and the whole truck shuddered to a stop just yards away. My heart was hammering so loud I could barely think. I blinked, and he was gone. I got out with my flashlight, snow cutting at my face like glass. The world outside was pure white and black, nothing but the hiss of the storm and the crunch of my boots. There were footprints, bare ones. They led off the asphalt and into the tree line. I followed, maybe 15 feet, until the light caught something dangling from a low branch. It was a wooden carving, small as a hand, shaped like a human face with hollow eyes, and a mouth carved into an O feathers, and beads hung from its chin, swaying in the wind. I heard it then, a low moaning sound, distant but moving closer. It didn't sound human, more like something trying to imitate one. I turned toward the sound and saw movement in the trees, a tall, thin shape weaving between the trunks. Too fast, too smooth. I ran. I don't even remember climbing into the cab, just the doors slamming shut and the engine roaring as I stomped the pedal. The tires spun, caught, and the truck lurched forward. I didn't look back until I was clear of the bend, but when I did, I saw it. A figure at the tree line, still as a statue. Same height as the man, but its head wasn't right. It was elongated, crowned with antlers that scraped against the low branches. For miles after that, my knuckles stayed white on the wheel. My breath fogged the windshield even though the heat was blasting. I tried turning the radio on again, just static, until a voice cut through. It was soft, aged, weary. Don't stop for him. I froze. The voice wasn't one I recognized, but it was clear as day. Then, silence again. By the time I hit a gas station near a place called Dry Creek, it was almost 1 a.m. The sign flickered in the snow, and a single old Ford pickup sat out front. I pulled in, grateful just to see light. The man inside looked to be in his 60s, long braid down his back, face lined deep from years of cold. He gave me a small nod as I walked in, stomping snow from my boots. "Hell of a storm," I said. "Bad place to be driving this late," he replied, not looking up from his paper. His accent was thick, but even. "You come down from the north?" "Yeah, Route 117. That made him look up. His eyes narrowed just a touch. "You see anyone?" "Someone standing in the road." But when I stopped, he was gone. He folded the paper slowly. "You shouldn't stop on that stretch. Not in winter. That's old ground out there." "Old ground?" I asked. He nodded toward the back wall where a carved mask hung between 2 shelves of motor oil. The mask looked almost identical to the one I'd seen hanging in the woods. "Wetiko," he said. "Some call it a spirit, some a sickness. It gets inside a man and eats his heart, makes him hungry for flesh. When the man dies, what's left of him walks the land, looking for warmth. It mimics voices, faces, sometimes even memories, but it's never human again." I forced a laugh. "Just a legend, right?" He didn't laugh back. "You believe what you need to so you can keep driving." When I stepped back out, the storm had died to a gentle fall. I climbed into the cab and sat for a while, staring at my own reflection in the glass. My pulse finally began to slow. That's when I saw it. Someone had drawn on the frost of my passenger side window. A crude face, hollow eyes, open mouth. Below it, a single word scratched out by a fingertip. "Hungry." I wiped it away, hands shaking. Maybe it was a prank, I thought. Maybe that old man did it while I was inside. But when I checked the ground, there were no footprints. I started the engine and got back on the road, this time doing 45. The storm thickened again, and soon the world disappeared behind snow. The GPS flickered, lost signal. I drove for what felt like an hour without seeing a single sign or landmark. Then, through the blur of white, I saw a light. A rest stop, maybe a ranger station, just a small concrete building half buried in drifts. I pulled in, desperate for a break. Inside, the place was half collapsed, roof sagging under snow. A soda machine stood in the corner, long dead. I was about to turn around when I noticed the smell, sweet and rotten, like spoiled meat. Something shuffled in the dark hallway beyond the bathrooms. I called out, "Hello?" No answer, just the faint crunch of footsteps. I backed away, but the noise came closer, slow, dragging, wet. Then I heard breathing. A figure stepped into view. It was the man from the road, or what had been him. His face was long, skin stretched thin and gray over bone, eyes black and empty. His teeth were red. He opened his mouth, and I swear I heard my own voice come out. "Don't stop for him." I bolted. The door nearly tore off its hinges as I ran through the snow toward the rig. Something slammed against the cab just as I got inside, rocking the whole truck. I fired the ignition, shifted, and floored it. In the mirror, I saw it, running after me on all fours, its limbs jerking wrong, its antlers glinting in the headlights. Snow churned beneath its hands like smoke. Then it stopped, shrinking into the distance, standing upright again at the edge of the woods. Watching, I didn't stop driving until dawn. When I finally reached a way station outside Missoula, I looked at the back window of my cab. The frost had melted in places, but the mark was still there. 3 long, finger-shaped streaks dragged across the glass. That was 20 years ago. I've been back through Montana plenty of times since, but I never take Route 117 anymore. I take the long way, even in good weather, because somewhere out there, beneath those pines and that endless snow, something still walks, and it's hungry. It was nearly midnight when I saw the blue rest area sign glowing through the drizzle. Rest area 1 mile, exit 44. I'd been driving since sunrise, trying to make it from Denver to Indianapolis in one shot, solo. I was on I-70 somewhere in the middle of Missouri, the kind of stretch where the radio fades to static and every exit looks the same. The rain had been coming down for hours, smearing the taillights of distant semis into long red comets. My shoulders ached. My eyes burned. When the sign appeared, I decided to stop. I wasn't tired enough for a motel, but I needed a bathroom and maybe 15 minutes with my seat reclined. The rest area came into view like an island in the dark. A single building with the standard brown brick bathrooms, a couple vending machines glowing beside it, and 2 long rows of parking, one for passenger vehicles, the other for trucks. The place was nearly empty. 1 sedan at the far end, lights off, and 3 semis idling in the truck lane, their diesel engines rumbling like thunder in the damp night. I pulled into a space under the floodlights. The rain had slowed to a mist, and the world felt muffled. I grabbed my phone, no signal, and a bottle of water, then stepped out into the chill. The first thing I noticed was the smell, wet asphalt, diesel exhaust, and something else underneath. A faint metallic tang, like old pennies. Inside the restroom building, the fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The air smelled of disinfectant and mildew. I splashed cold water on my face, stared at my reflection for a while, and thought about how eerily quiet it was. When I came back outside, one of the semis had moved. At least, I thought it had. The far truck, a faded blue Kenworth, had been parked nose in near the end when I went inside. Now, it was closer, maybe 4 spaces down. Its headlights were off, but the engine was still idling. I shrugged it off. Drivers shuffle around all the time, trying to line up better for sleeping. I climbed back into my car, turned the heater on low, and reclined the seat. The hum of the trucks mixed with the rain, and after a few minutes I started to drift. I must have fallen asleep because when I opened my eyes again, the clock on my dashboard read 12:47 a.m. The world outside was darker. The floodlights had gone out, all but one flickering above the restroom building. The trucks were still there, except now the blue Kenworth's headlights were on, full beams pointing straight at my car. I squinted, shielding my eyes. The glare was blinding. I sat up and waited, expecting the driver to kill the lights or pull out. But they didn't. They just stayed there, engine idling, high beams locked on me. After maybe 30 seconds, the lights went off. The truck's cab light flicked on instead, illuminating a vague shape inside. Someone sitting behind the wheel, motionless. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe the driver thought I was another trucker and flashed their lights by mistake. I took a swig of water and tried to relax, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I decided to stretch my legs again. I opened the door, stepped out into the mist, and looked toward the truck. The cab light was still on, and through the glass I could just barely make out a man's face, pale, motionless, staring in my direction. "Evening," I called, forcing a friendly tone. No response. The door on the truck creaked open slowly. The man climbed down. He was tall, wearing a dark jacket and a trucker's cap pulled low. His clothes were soaked, though the rain had stopped. He didn't walk toward the building. He didn't look away. He just stood there beside his truck, staring. Something about his stillness was wrong. People shift their weight, scratch their neck, fold their arms. He didn't. He stood perfectly upright, hands at his sides, head tilted slightly as if studying me. I gave a nervous nod and turned toward the restroom again, pretending I hadn't noticed. When I looked back over my shoulder, he was gone. The truck door hung open. The cab light flickered. My pulse kicked up. I walked faster, cutting across the parking lot, pretending I was just stretching. But as I reached the building's door, I heard boots crunching on wet gravel behind me. I spun around. No one. Just the hiss of the idling trucks and the buzz of the flickering light. I ducked inside the restroom, heart thudding. I locked myself in a stall and listened. The only sound was the faint drip of a leaky faucet. Then, footsteps, slow, heavy. They entered the building, stopped near the sinks. A pause. Then, a dragging sound like something being scraped across the tile. I held my breath. A low voice hummed something under its breath. A slow, tuneless hum that echoed off the cinder block walls. The footsteps came closer to my stall. I saw the shadow of boots stop just outside the door. Then the handle rattled. Once, twice, I pressed back against the wall, barely breathing. The rattling stopped. The hum continued, moving toward the exit. The door creaked open, and then silence. I waited a long time, maybe 10 minutes, before I dared to move. When I finally cracked the stall door, the room was empty, but there was something written on the mirror. At first, I thought it was steam, but when I got closer, I saw it was finger-drawn in what looked like grease or oil. "I like your car." My stomach turned. I bolted out of the building and ran for my car. The lot looked the same, except the blue Kenworth's headlights were off again, and its driver's door was still hanging open. I jumped into my car, locked the doors, and started the engine. That's when I saw movement in my rearview mirror. A figure was standing behind my car, close enough that I could see the glint of wet pavement between his boots. His head was bent low, almost touching the trunk. I slammed the gear into reverse out of reflex, but stopped when he straightened up. He stepped to the side, into the beam of my taillights. It was the truck driver. His face was wrong. The skin looked stretched too tight, like it had been pulled over the bones. His eyes were small and deep-set, and his mouth was locked in a smile too wide to be real. He tapped on my rear window once, twice. Then He mouthed something. At first, I couldn't make it out. Then I realized he was saying the same thing as the mirror. "I like your car." I threw it into drive and floored it. The tires squealed on the wet pavement, and the car lurched forward. I caught a glimpse of him in my side mirror, running alongside the car for a few steps, impossibly fast, before vanishing into the dark. I didn't stop driving until I hit the next town, 20 miles away. At a gas station, I pulled in under the lights, shaking. The clerk inside gave me a weird look when I stumbled in to buy coffee. "Long night?" he asked. "You could say that," I muttered. When I went back outside, I noticed something streaked across my trunk. At first, I thought it was mud, but when I ran my fingers over it, it was thick and dark, smeared in long parallel lines, as if someone had dragged their fingers down the metal while it was moving. And there, pressed into the grime just below my taillight, was a single handprint, large, greasy, too many fingers. I didn't go back on the interstate that night. I found a cheap motel, locked the door, and stayed up till dawn, watching the parking lot through the curtain. When I finally got back on the road the next morning, the sky was clear, the rain gone. I told myself it had been exhaustion, maybe some psycho at the rest stop playing games. But a few hours later, as I passed another blue sign, "Rest area 2 miles, exit 72, I noticed something in the distance, far ahead on the shoulder of the highway. A blue Kenworth, parked alone. Its driver's door was hanging open, and as I passed, I could have sworn I saw a man standing beside it, smiling, holding something long and thin in his hand, something that glinted in the sunlight. I've stopped at plenty of rest areas since then, but only during the day. I never take exit 44 anymore, because sometimes, late at night when I'm driving through the rain, I catch the reflection of headlights behind me. Too close, too steady. And every time, I swear, I hear that same voice, faint under the hum of my tires. "I like your car." They say the badge never really comes off, that when you retire, it just sits heavier in your pocket. I've been out of the force 15 years now, living a quiet life up near Millinocket. My knees ache, my hands shake in the cold, and most days the world feels distant, like I'm watching it through frosted glass. But some nights, when the wind howls through the pines and the snow beats against the windows, I still see her face, the hitchhiker. That case never made the news the way it should have. Maybe the department wanted to bury it. Maybe they were just protecting what was left of us who worked it. But I remember every detail, every smell, every sound. It was January of 1998, the kind of Maine winter that chews through steel. I was a detective with the state police out of Bangor. We got the call early one morning. A rest stop off Interstate 95 near Township 9, just north of Lincoln. A trucker had reported a smell behind the plow berms. He thought it was a dead deer at first. I drove up with my partner, Bill Harlow. The sun was barely up, a pale smear behind the clouds. Snow fell in a slow drift, muffling everything. The rest area was one of those older ones, 2 picnic tables, a restroom hut, a few vending machines, and a long line of truck slots, half buried in ice. The smell hit before we saw her. Behind the rest stop, about 50 yards into the woods, we found a mound of snow that looked off, too even, too white. Bill prodded it with a stick and a piece of fabric surface. Denim. When we cleared the snow away, there she was. A woman, mid-20s maybe, blonde hair matted with ice. She was frozen solid, her face locked in an expression of terror so sharp it barely looked human. Her throat had been cut from ear to ear, but it was her eyes that got me. They were open, wide, glassy, like she'd seen something right before she died and never stopped seeing it. The coroner said she'd been dead at least a week, but what chilled me more was her condition. There were no animal tracks, no signs of scavenging, not even frostbite on her hands. It was like the forest had preserved her deliberately. We ran her prints. Nothing. No missing person report matched. A week later, we found her bag at a truck stop 30 miles south. Inside was a map of the I-95 corridor, marked with pen circles, places she'd stopped, maybe hitching her way north. One name was written on the margin, Red. That's how we found him. His full name was Earl Red Mathers, long-haul driver, 49 years old, from Vermont. His rig, a beat-up Freightliner with a faded red cab, matched a witness's description of a truck parked at the rest stop the night the woman likely died. We brought him in on a Friday morning. I remember the smell of diesel that clung to him and the way he smiled, polite, like an uncle at a family barbecue. He swore he'd never seen her, said he'd pulled over that night to sleep through the storm. He offered us coffee from his thermos. Bill didn't buy a word of it. Neither did I. We searched his rig. Nothing. No blood, no hair, no sign of a struggle. But when we lifted the rubber mat under the bunk, there was something frozen to the metal, a smear of red-brown residue like old rust. Lab confirmed it was blood. That was enough for a warrant. Red broke when we showed him the photos. He didn't cry, didn't beg. He just looked tired. I didn't kill her, he said quietly. I only picked her up. She was already dead. We both stared at him. What do you mean, already dead? I asked. She was walking the shoulder near the rest stop, thumb out, smiling. Said she'd been stranded since the last storm. But when she got in, the cab went cold, colder than outside. She didn't talk much, just looked out the window. I drove maybe 10 miles, and she asked me to pull over. Said she was tired. He rubbed his hands together. When I turned to ask where she wanted to stop, she was gone. Door still locked, seatbelt still buckled, just gone. We thought he was bluffing, trying to play crazy. But then he said something that froze my blood. She looked at me before she left, he whispered, eyes wide, like she was seeing something behind me. Then she smiled, said, "You stopped at the wrong mile." Bill snorted. "And then what, Red?" "She just vanished." He nodded. I didn't touch her, but she kept coming back. Every time I parked at night, I'd see her in the mirror, walking behind the trailer, always smiling. I stopped sleeping. I thought if I buried her clothes, maybe she'd stop following me. He looked right at me then, and I swear to God, I believed he believed every word. His eyes were bloodshot, skin pale as chalk. "Check behind the rest stop," he said. "There's another one." We thought he was bluffing again until we did. 2 days later, another thaw revealed a second body, half a mile from the first. Same M.O., same look of terror. But this one was from 1979. Red would have been 29 then. The dates didn't match, but the pattern did. Every 2 decades, a woman vanishing from that same stretch, same rest stop. We charged him anyway. The DA needed a conviction, and Red didn't fight it. He pled guilty to manslaughter, though we never understood why he confessed to a crime he claimed he didn't commit. They sent him to Warren State Prison. 3 months later, he hanged himself in his cell. They found something carved into the wall above him. 6 words, deep and uneven, scratched into the concrete with what looked like a nail. She's still walking. She's still cold. I retired in 2009. Thought I'd left it all behind. But this past winter, during that January blizzard, I stopped at a rest area north of Lincoln on my way back from visiting my daughter in Bangor. It was late, snow coming down hard. I parked near the restroom just to stretch my legs. The air smelled of diesel and pine. The place looked the same. Old brick, dim yellow light flickering in the storm. When I turned toward the tree line, I saw footprints leading into the woods. Bare feet. Small. My breath fogged the air, heart thudding like it used to when I was young. I followed the prints for maybe 30 feet before the wind started erasing them. That's when I saw her, standing between the trees, wearing a denim jacket, blonde hair matted with snow. Her skin was pale blue, lips cracked, eyes wide and bright in the dark. She smiled. Then she whispered, so soft I could barely hear over the wind, "You stopped at the wrong mile." I stumbled back, heart hammering, nearly fell on the ice. When I looked again, she was gone. I told myself it was the cold, or my mind playing tricks. But when I got back to my car, the windshield was fogged from the inside, and across the glass, written in a finger's trail, were those same 6 words, red carved in his cell. She's still walking. She's still cold. That's why I don't drive that stretch anymore. I take the long way down Route 2, no matter the weather. Some nights, I still wake up to the sound of the wind rattling the windows, thinking I hear footsteps crunching in the snow outside. And sometimes, when I look out toward the tree line, I swear I see her, still smiling, still cold,